Welcome back, Shop Rats. It's another Talk About It Tuesday, and today we're going to talk about how difficult it is financially for young people to get into the hobby today. Or is it? I'm Mike.
This is My Cars Shop.
Talk About It Tuesdays are all about me thinking about stuff to talk about and then talking about stuff for you guys to think about. And recently I ran across a subject matter that I thought, well, that's interesting. And the subject matter was, no young people can afford to get into the hobby today. It's just too bloody expensive. So I put myself in that position. I put myself in the thought of being young.
One could only wish.
If I was young today and not old, what would I do if I really wanted to get into the hobby? Now, I admit that I do have over 40 years experience with this stuff, so it's hard to project myself into youthful ignorance and enthusiasm when I'm so cynical and jaded. But, however, knowing me and knowing my mindset, and even knowing the mindset that I had when I was 22 years old, I still think there'd be a will, and I'd find a way. Yes, let's face it, if I was to want to run out and buy a 70 Challenger project car to work on today, I wouldn't find one for $300. Wait, I did. And if I wanted to find a 67 Plymouth Belvedere Post car and pick that up for next to nothing, I wouldn't be able to.
Oh, wait. I did.
See my point? They're out there, but you have to look. However, I have connections. I have decades of connections and that kind of stuff. So let's talk about it from a little bit different perspective. If I didn't have all of those connections and all of the resources that I have, what would I do today if my dream was to own a 70 Challenger? Well, I think it's a great topic, so let's get a bit creative. I think one mindset that we have to deal with is the instant gratification society that we live in. Nobody's patient. Everybody wants everything right now. I'm 25 years old and I want a 70 Challenger, and I start looking through the Auto Trader and on Facebook Marketplace and on eBay and on Craigslist, and I can't touch one for less than $15,000, and it's a total piece of crap, and it needs $20,000 worth of work, and I can't afford that. Boo-hoo me. Okay, I'm exaggerating and being a bit of a jerk. I get it. But by the same token, that's kind of what we tend to do. If we look in traditional places, we're going to pay traditional prices. We've kind of already had that discussion, so that's not where I'm going today. But if I wanted a 70 Challenger, I wanted one that was a project car that was fairly complete, didn't necessarily have to have a motor and so forth. I'm going to be looking at, $10,000, $15,000 for something that's not rusted right into the ground. Well, that's completely out of my budget at 25 years old. So what can I do to work my way up to something like that? Well, we could barter, we could trade, we could beg, rob, and steal, but that's not the point of today's subject. So what I thought about was, what would I do? Well, I got on Facebook Marketplace last night and just kind of looked through it for projects that I could do that would be stair steps towards something that I could afford in the world of a Challenger. And so these are just random. They're mostly Mopar, not all. Some of them would probably be more than I would personally spend, but I think they're within the reach of at least some people. So let's talk about these specific project cars that I found that are maybe outside the box of what we would think about, but definitely could be built to have resale value that would move us towards the goal of getting the car that we want. The first thing I looked for was Aspen's Velaris. Late 70s, early 80s Aspens and Velaris, because they're kind of like a Duster except with a transverse torsion bar system, and they're kind of cool looking cars. I had an Aspen RT back in the 80s, and I liked the car. It was cool. The first one I ran across was a 78 or 79 Aspen. Neat looking car. It had the window louvers on it, and just kind of a cool looking car. Now the price was beyond what I might spend at 25, but in today's day and age, beggars can't be choosers, and at least it would be in the realm of consideration. It was $2,800. Not terribly cheap, but not terribly expensive. However, I decided that was not the car for me and to look further. So let's keep looking for late 70s, early 80s Dodge Aspens, Plymouth Velaris, and lo and behold, here's another one. I think this was a 78 or 79 for $1,000. Now, yeah, it needed a lot of work, but for $1,000, a guy could put some money into it and wouldn't be too bad. But $1,000 is almost kind of beyond my budget. I can afford a little bit of cash here and there, but the first initial outlay might be a bit much. So let's keep looking and see what else we can find. So let's broaden the scope of what we're looking for. Now, this one's going to be something that at 25 I would have had the skills for. Not everybody necessarily would have the skills to do this one, but it's an option is what I'm saying. And it was a mid-80s Dodge Rampage. Cool little pickup car, whatever you call those things. Now, I think the motor was there and other stuff like that. And the guy only wanted $600 for it. Now, throw a little 318 in that, put a little rear end in that, just junkyard parts, all bone stock stuff, and you got something that you might be able to flip for a few grand and make a few grand and get you one step closer to the project car that you really want. Do that 2 or 3 times, and lo and behold, it might not be long, and you'll be there. Now, yeah, you're going to have to put in some sweat equity. I'm not saying you're not. But if you start thinking outside the box and look at what you can do on the cheap that's going to make you some money, well, that's certainly not a bad way to go. Besides that, a little Rampage with a V8 in it, that's just cool stuff. Please understand that I'm not saying any of these cars are going to be able to be fixed up and sold with enough money to get you into a Challenger, but they could be bartering material. They could be sold, and then you find another project that's a little bit more desirable by people when it's done, and you see what I mean? So it may take you 5 or 10 years to get there, but little by little, bite by bite, you could make progress towards it. So here's another cool one, and this is a project I've always wanted to do, but decided it wasn't that high on my priority list, and this was just a 90s Dodge Daytona. $800. Man, throw a V8 in that thing. Oh. Rear-wheel drive. Oh. That would be just a cool project. And I think, if you put a little modified 360 in there, I'm not talking spending big money. Take a junkyard motor, throw a cam in it, a good ignition system, a 4-barrel carburetor, put a decent shift kit with a little bit of a slippy converter and a decent gear in the back, and you got a fun little drag car you could beat the crap out of every weekend at the drag strip, and it won't cost you hardly anything. Fun. And you could sell it and make some money on it. Just be honest about what it is. Now, this one really excited me. This is one that a guy is trying to move. He had a bigger price on it, and he hasn't been able to sell it. And I didn't look that in depth, but it's a 50s Chrysler. Yeah, it's a boat. It's a big old car. But what a cool custom this thing could be. Doesn't have to be big money car. Just put in the time, throw a decent paint job on it, learn how to paint a car yourself. You can develop skills while you're doing these projects to get you ready for that Challenger you want. Put a more modern engine in it. $500. If that wasn't on the West Coast, I'd be thinking about that now, because that's right in my price range.
Oh, yeah.
The last one on the list is a little different. It's not a Mopar. It's a 1979 MG, and the guy wants $700 for it. No motor, no transmission. He bought it for the motor and transmission. He's got it priced cheap because he just wants to get it out of his garage. Oh my goodness, throw a small block Chevy in there. Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Dirt cheap to build. Little bit of reinforcement here and there. Throw a satin paint job on it. Pedal it down the road for a few grand and move on to the next one. That's a cool flip. Yeah, you'd have a little bit of jack into it, but not a lot. See, if you're willing to think outside the box and you're not wanting to get to the top of the mountain in one step, there's tons of stuff you can do. Now, here's the thing about all of these cars that I listed. I got on Marketplace last night at about midnight and spent 10 minutes, and that's what I came up with. In 10 minutes. Imagine if you watched it for a few weeks and mined and dug deeper and changed your search criterias, and what might you be able to come up with for next to nothing that somebody's got in their garage? They just want to peddle off to somebody who can actually enjoy it and use it. We didn't even talk about pickup trucks. I did glance at a few pickup trucks, and you can pick up an old 80s, 70s, or 80s Dodge 2-wheel drive, well, even some 4-wheel drives for a grand or two, some a little less, some a little more. But I was staying away from pickups. However, pickups are really cool vehicles to purchase, fix, and flip. Pickups are bringing pretty good money these days. If you watch, stay away from the new stuff, stick into the older stuff, you can get some stuff that you could make a few bucks on. Finally, I am going to circle back around to the fact that I'm still finding cars for a few $100 or under $1,000. Yes, they need a ton of work, but you have to be patient. You have to really, they are out there. I don't care where you live. Okay, maybe not in downtown, well, even maybe in downtown Los Angeles. If you're willing to ask questions and develop relationships and keep your eyes peeled, and good deals are to be had, but you have to be ready to jump on them the moment they show up. That's one of the reasons I'm not looking right now, although I'm leaning towards one of those fleet side 60s Dodge pickups right now you've heard me talk about. Oh, that reminds me, I have misinformation on my Ram. I'll get back to that in another episode, but I misunderstood some things about what's going on with this, so we'll circle back to that at another time. Anywho, those are my thoughts today. If I ran across another 70 Challenger for under $500, you're darn right I'd buy it. I'd buy it tomorrow. I don't know where I'd find the money, because I certainly don't have it right now, but I would beg, rob, borrow, or steal to get it, set it aside, and make it a next project in the queue. They're out there. I know you don't think so, but it's all a matter of connections, developing those connections, keeping your eyes open. Talk to people who own scrap yards. That stuff comes in and out all the time, and if you tell them, hey, I'm looking for an old 60s Mopar that you're just going to scrap out anyway, something that you don't think is fixable, I'm interested in that. I'll give you scrap value for. I'll give you 10% over scrap value for it. You never know what you can find. What's that old saying? You have not because you ask not. Oh yeah. All right, that'll do it for this one. We will catch you on the next one. I appreciate you joining me here on these Talk About It Tuesdays. They're fun. I'm always perusing around trying to find another topic to talk about, to find something interesting, and find something that'll spur you guys to think differently, and maybe have some conversations not only here on the you thing, but also with the people around you. All right, we'll catch you on the next one. Rah!